So there's this idea floating around, a kind of NATO for the Muslim world, one that's independent of the U.S., armed with Turkish drones, and funded by Saudi money. That's the discussion being floated between Riyadh, Islamabad, and Ankara. So the question we're really wrestling with here is this the Middle East actually redrawing its own red lines, or is it just a delusion?
I think we're watching a transformative shift in real time, and I see it as more of a mirage. It feels like a loose cooperation, constrained by all these external alliances. And this Muslim NATO label, I think it's just a complete mischaracterization.
But look at the board. The region is tired of waiting for Western guarantees that might never come. This is almost a perfect synergy. You have Saudi Arabia bringing the checkbook and the religious legitimacy. Turkey brings the industrial base, the drones, the armor, and it's increasingly independent of the West. And Pakistan? They bring the boots on the ground and, of course, the ultimate trump card, a nuclear arsenal. It's a jigsaw puzzle that actually fits. This isn't just talk. It creates a self-sufficient power block that can handle its own security.
A block? I mean, come on, that's a massive stretch. You're seeing a signaling exercise and calling it an alliance? Sure, there is a vacuum because the West is distracted, but let's be precise. Turkey is still firmly anchored in NATO. Legally, operationally, they're tied to the Atlantic Alliance. The idea that Ankara is ready to just swap that for a regional pact, it ignores the structural reality of the situation.
I get the NATO constrained, I do, but look at what's actually happening on the ground. Just last September, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan signed a mutual defense agreement. They pledged to respond if either is attacked. Now, Turkey is circling with a draft to make this a trilateral pact. Pakistan's own defense leadership has openly acknowledged these talks are happening. This is moving beyond just signaling into concrete defensive architecture.
Okay, but even if Turkey isn't completely handcuffed by NATO, the bigger hole in your argument for me is Pakistan. You're banking on a nuclear umbrella that simply isn't opening. The evidence implies Pakistan is going to stay completely silent on whether their nuclear arsenal even covers their allies. They just can't risk American sanctions or, international isolation. If you remove the nukes from the equation, you don't have a strategic deterrent against existential threats. You just have conventional capacity building, which is useful, yes. A game changer? No.
I think you're underestimating the conventional side. But more importantly, you're ignoring the sheer desperation for stability. The status quo is what's forcing them together. Even historic rivals like Saudi Arabia and Turkey are normalizing relations because they have to. They need to manage Syria, they need to manage regional instability, and they know the U.S. isn't coming to save them. They're aligning because they have no other choice.
But trust doesn't just appear because you need it to. A collective defense agreement is a huge leap for countries with this much baggage. I mean, look at the Gulf itself. Saudi Arabia is in a struggle for regional dominance with the UAE right now. The region is fragmented. Expecting these nations, who've only just started sharing intelligence again, to commit to a binding attack on one is an attack on all pact seems very premature. Deep integration needs a level of trust that just isn't there yet.
I see it the other way around. That fragmentation is exactly why Saudi Arabia is pushing for this. Success breeds success. If this trilateral arrangement holds, it creates a new pole of power. It could act as an anchor that might attract countries like Egypt or Jordan who are feeling that same security anxiety. It creates a center of gravity that the region is currently lacking.
But multilateralism in this region has a terrible track record. I mean, look at the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the OIC. It's struggled for decades to actually enforce resolutions because national interests just diverge too sharply. A Muslim Security Council sounds good on paper, but in reality, the interests of a Gulf monarchy and a South Asian republic are just too far apart to act as a single body.
Look, here's the bottom line for me. The money, the industry, and the manpower are all there. It's the only viable alternative to just relying on Washington for a region that needs to enforce its own red lines.
The pieces are there, I'll grant you that, but the glue is missing. Between Turkey's NATO obligations and the extreme sensitivity of Pakistan's nuclear program, this isn't a new architecture, it's just neighbors talking.
We will both be watching the upcoming meeting between President Erdogan and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Riyadh. I think that will tell us if this is real.
Absolutely. That's where the rubber meets the road.
Thanks for listening to the debate.